My friends, one of my favorite things about the art of mixing is being able to scratch that creative itch that each of us has within ourselves. And it's not something that we're going to learn overnight. We understand that and do what we can each day to become better at our craft. With all of that being said, there are many things that are counterintuitive to our progress as engineers, and I want to go over all of the things that stop you from taking it to the next step. By the end of this video, you'll finally be able to stop ruining your workflow because you'll understand the biggest offenders and caveats that are holding you up. In case you wanted a hint of which band might be my next template for the month, now you have it. So what's happening, fam? Miami here with JST, and I've done many of the things on this list. Instead of focusing on the important tasks, I got caught up in these obnoxious habits. So let's get into it. Number 1. Working on subpar material. One of the things that is the biggest waste of time when trying to flow is trying to save a poorly recorded project. Now, we can't always help this, right? But if you ignore this, just know you're going into a situation in which you already feel defeated. For starters, let's say you have phasey drums, bad vocal takes, and clipped guitars that push into the red. And since we're already pushing into the red, you can push that subscribe button and bell to be notified when we upload new content. My transition game is still crazy. Also, if you thought I was gonna do the transition when I said subpar, I caught you slipping. Back to the point. To get into the realm of proper mixing workflow, you need to understand when the project might just need to be re-recorded. Every minute you're wasting working on that track, you are wasting your time as well as the person that you're mixing for. Hopefully, I'm not putting you to sleep, which brings us to our next topic. Mixing when you're tired. It's important to not just get into a mix when you aren't rested. You make bad decisions when you aren't alert, and it kind of leads back to one of my favorite quotes from How I Met Your Mother. Nothing good ever happens after 2 a.m. And I promise some of you are up mixing at that time, because I can see the analytics of when some of you are watching these videos. Go get some rest. Not fully editing before you mix. This is one of the worst habits you can have, and all it does is cause you to waste time. Think about it in the sense of recording an instrument. You wouldn't grid your vocals until you tune them, right? So why mix something while you're listening to distracting mistakes happening? You should be focusing on making it sonically pleasing instead of losing your train of thought every time you hear an out-of-tune vocal or guitar that comes in slightly early. This is the key to perfecting your mixing workflow. So we're gonna hop into the next one now. Getting mix crits from the wrong people. Yo, let me give you a mix crit on this. Nah bro, I'm good. When you ask someone for a mix crit, their opinion is now becoming your new reference. Now, what are the qualifications of this person to be giving you advice on a mix? There are a couple different ways this can go. 1. You're asking someone their advice on something as a casual listener because they listen to the style of music you're working on, okay? Or 2, you're asking a trusted friend or peer to give you advice and maybe point out some things you aren't noticing or might have missed because you're too lost in a mix. Never confuse these two things. The second person is okay to give you advice to an extent. And we have an understanding that mixing is a truly subjective thing. They may listen and say, brighten the guitars, but maybe part of your sound is that you've gotten really good at getting dark and warm guitar tones. It's important to understand that not all advice is good advice. If I took advice from every person that listened to something I mixed, I would be boosting and cutting EQ curves in the same exact area because of just different people's opinions. And once you find yourself a good group of people you can rely on, never let them go. Bug them until the end of time, get their opinions, and hope that they trust you enough to do the same. That'll keep you guys in a revolving circle of proper mix crits. Our next topic, chasing someone else's sound. It's okay to admire the mixes from your favorite engineers, but you need to understand when enough is enough. What happens to people is they chase the sonic quality of someone else and feel like they failed when they can't get a one-to-one replica. But the reality is, it just isn't possible to do so. If you give a mix engineer the same mix, a month apart, I promise you that those mixes are going to sound different. And that's with the same exact person doing it. So what makes you think you're gonna be able to completely recreate a sound when you aren't even the same person? It's okay to reference and find a similarity in the sonic quality and levels of the instruments, but you need to be able to understand when enough is enough. If you really can't help but to copy the exact sound of the mixer, just try to EQ match so you can at least get an understanding of the EQ curve they have going on that got them to where they are. But in all seriousness, this will do nothing but give you a headache and cause you to stress out. Create your own sound, and I promise that that will speak volumes to you. Which brings us to our next point. Changing your listening volume while mixing. Every single time that you change the volume in your listening environment, you are changing your perspective. And I think it was Mike Kalasian, the mastering engineer, that said he literally leaves his volume at the same thing at all times by locking it. Practices like this will limit your confusion when you wonder where the background vocals went when you lower the volume, or if the snare needs to change a couple of dB. It's definitely okay to do this at the end of a mix to just make sure that your main vocal and snare are hitting in the right spot, but going back and forth while you're in the middle of the mixing process will have you constantly changing levels that might not have ever needed to be changed in the first place. Take some time, find the perfect volume to mix at, and leave it there constantly. It's the same as your listening position if you really think about it. You change it and now you're hearing something in an entirely different way. Just some food for thought for my friends. On to our next point, mixing under the influence. I'm gonna get some backlash for this one, but hey, I'm always gonna keep it real and sometimes might bring up topics you wouldn't expect on this channel. It is what it is. I know it can seem tempting to mix when drinking or doing some of the harder stuff, but in reality, the best way to mix is with a clear mind. Instead of sitting there wondering why moving your plugin parameters aren't doing anything because they're in bypass, just be cognizant of what it is that you're actually doing. Now, if you're writing music, probably a different story. Mixing music, especially music people are paying you to mix, I think we can agree that we should be level-headed at these times. But hey, this is not a one-size-fits-all scenario. There are many platinum mixers that would disagree with me, but I bet you they've been doing this so long that it's just part of their lifestyle. For those that are trying to get into proper mixing workflow, this is just a suggestion of mine to try and handle it sober, just to see the results. Compare and see if it makes any difference. Hopefully you'll find some use out of this. And since we're finding things, hopefully we can find a way out of number 8. Getting lost in one section of a mix. Have you ever gotten your session prepped, looped a section of a mix, and spent hours getting that section to sound perfect, only to realize when you move to another part of the song, it just doesn't work anymore? And this is because the songs are dynamic, and if you were to mix a part with really fast drums, it isn't really going to translate to a slowed down bridge, is it? The compression is going to hit differently. You might not need that low end cut on the double bass that you did in the other part. It could be a number of things. Just remember to jump around the song and not spend so much time on that single section. This can stifle your progress and increase the time it takes to finish your mixes. So let's go over all of these one more time in true fashion. Working on subpar material. Mixing when you're tired. Not fully editing before you mix. Getting mix crits from the wrong people, chasing someone else's sound, changing your listening volume while mixing, mixing under the influence, and getting lost in one section of a mix. When I started this, I did not think it was going to be 8 things, but here we are. Quite a few things, right? But the people at the top of the food chain are not dealing with these issues. They're focusing on creating art, not polishing turds, focused on making their own sound instead of copying someone else's. And once you can find a way to break these habits, you'll truly be one step closer to creating the perfect mix. If you're an engineer on the come up, give this video a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe, you only have to do it one time. And tap that bell for notification so when a video drops, you know the location. Until next time, mic drop. Except as engineers we know, I'd never really drop this thing because that get really, wow. I think that's like the 5th or 6th time I've dropped this thing, but that's something to say for the durability of Shure microphones. If you guys want to send me something, go ahead. Later.